All right, take two. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Discourse Education podcast, or rather a Telegram exclusive of the podcast itself. I'm Mr. Chang, the GP English and History tutor of the Discourse Education. Well, I shouldn't say tutor. I would like to think of myself as more of a teacher rather than just a tutor. And yeah, this is another Telegram exclusive, for general paper students in particular. Yeah, and I just realized at the beginning of this video I said take two. That's because this is the second take. I screwed up the first one. I mean, you wouldn't realize it if I didn't point it out, but yeah, there we go. It just reveals like how, my mind is deteriorating. Okay, anyway, yeah, without further ado, alright? So what we are gonna talk about today is really how you can improve your reading comprehension. And what I mean is how you can improve your understanding of the text itself, alright? So of course, if you are, a Sec 3 or Sec 4 English student, right, stumbling upon this video, this certainly can apply to you as well. But just keep in mind, because I'm filming this particular video for JC students, it's gonna be a lot more complex, not just in terms of the language, but also the depth of the things that we are talking about here. But hey, if there are any high readiness students who see this, right, I think you all can benefit from this. And so, yeah. So, what we're going to talk about today is really how you can improve your reading comprehension with close reading, right? Now, you might be wondering, what is close reading? If you're a lit student, I think you would be very familiar with this because this is the same technique that you use to decipher all your scene texts, right? So that means we are referring to things like your poems, your novels or novellas and so on and so forth, okay? And it simply put, it refers to the careful and sustained interpretation of a particular text itself. That means we want to really pay close attention to every single little detail. So for lit students, what you all typically pay attention to would be things like, alliteration or, other sort of literary devices. Oh, why does the author describe this particular thing in this particular way? So on and so forth. So you might be wondering, then why am I talking about this here? The thing is that we can adapt that technique and apply it to your, general paper comprehension as well. And in the context of GP or even, EL, right? Especially when you're dealing with your section C texts, okay? What we want to pay attention to really is the form and the subtext. So what is form? Form, simply put, it refers to the way that the particular text is constructed. And what I mean by that is that, if we look at it from a, I guess, bird's eye view, that means we are paying attention to things like paragraphing, i.e., what sort of point the author is making in each particular paragraph. How do they segment their ideas out? But we are really much more, interested in the minute details. So that means we are looking at the way that the sentences are constructed. So how does an author, or in the case of, two or more authors, how do the authors, right, make use of certain word choices, right, particular words? How do they, vary up their sentence structures, right? How do they make use of certain punctuation? So I mean, for J2 students, you all would already be very, very familiar with this. So questions like, why does the author write this particular phrase in brackets? Okay. For the J1 students, if you are joining us for the first time, welcome. If that sounds very foreign, don't worry about it. You will come into contact with these question types sooner or later. Right. So yeah, that's what we are referring to when we are talking about form in itself. Now, what is subtext then? Subtext, essentially, it means the hidden meanings conveyed within the text, all right? Typically, I would talk more about this in the context of, discussing dialogue in narrative writing for secondary school EL. But in the case of general paper, you definitely will get questions asking you about the subtext. That means asking you to infer the meaning of certain phrases or certain word choices. But at the same time, this can also mean tone, right? So what is the author's attitude towards something, okay, by using this particular word or phrase or even punctuation? So when we do close reading, this is the objective, right? This is the objective. Or rather, these are the objectives. We want to find out what the details of the form are, as well as what the subtext is. Okay, so the $1,000,000 question: how do we do it? All right, it's a simple 4-step program that I typically teach my students, and we are going to cover that here today. So your first step, what you want to do is you want to tackle unknown vocab. Very straightforward. You see any words you don't know, just go and dictionary it, right? Okay, I should phrase that properly. Just go and look up the dictionary for it. The second step, once you have teased out the meanings and the nuances of the specific meanings of certain words, right, in the text itself, then that's where you want to tackle, general knowledge. Because often all your comprehension texts would talk about real life events or issues of which you may not necessarily have the knowledge, right? Or rather, for which you may not necessarily have the knowledge. So when you come across these things, then you want to look them up, to get more context about what that particular issue or event or even individual is, right? What is it all about? Who are they? So on and so forth. After that, what you want to do is you want to break down complex sentence structures. That means taking really, really long sentences and then split them into digestible ideas. There is a very specific way of doing that I teach my students, and we are going to talk more about that in a bit, all right? But the rationale for doing that is simply put to make sure that you don't deviate from whatever sort of a meaning that the author is trying to convey. And once you have tackled these 3 steps, only then can we deal with the last one, which is reflecting on the writing choices. Because if you don't know certain words, you don't know certain general knowledge, if you misinterpret the meanings of certain complex sentence structures, so on and so forth, then whatever attempted reflections whatever reflections that you may attempt on the word choices itself or the writing choices, it may possibly be misconstrued as something else or even just outright misinterpreted. So yeah, that's why before you do the last step, you must do everything else first. Okay, so these are the 4 steps. All right. So first step, building vocab. Not going to talk about this anymore. Simply put, just go and look up the dictionary if you come across any words that you don't know. All right. Instead, I want to expound more upon this bit and the subsequent steps as well. How do we tackle this general knowledge bit? Okay. So for instance, right, H2 history students should know this. Okay. But let's look at an excerpt here. This excerpt was, or rather is, from one of the in-house, the Discourse Education's original comprehension papers that we wrote ourselves, and for which, the questions for which we also set ourselves, right? And in this particular comprehension paper, all the passages, so passages 1, 2, and 3, I personally wrote them, right? So in this particular case, this is how it began passage 1. On November 9th, 1989, Gunther Schabowski, I think that's how you pronounce it, stood in front of journalists and stated that there were no travel restrictions between East and West Berlin. That message was broadcast through West Berlin and spread like wildfire, culminating in thousands thronging the Berlin Wall, metaphorically and literally chipping away at a manifestation of the bipolar conflict that was the Cold War. The fall of the Berlin Wall is oft cited as one of the key defining moments in the Cold War and could arguably serve as a crucial example of iconoclasm. That is, i.e., stands for that is, the rejection of orthodox institutions and their prevailing beliefs through the breaking of imagery for political or religious reasons. Now, for H2 history students, like I said, you all should know what this is about, right? But let's say you have no clue what the hell I'm talking about here, all right? So you don't know who this guy is, okay? You don't know what happened on this date. Let's say you're not sure what this is about or even what this is. And those are the questions we can ask ourselves as we do more research into the the current affairs, or in this case, historical events that took place, so that you can gain more context, all right? So you can ask, who is Gunther Schabowski? What was the Cold War? What was the Berlin Wall? All right, I'm not going to talk about that here. Obviously, if you're interested, do go and read up more, but short of it is, the Cold War was this geopolitical conflict between the US and USSR, which is modern day Russia as you know it. Although that's not exactly accurate, but for simplicity's sake, yeah. And Gunther Schabowski was one of the junior, I guess, staff members of the East German government. And whatever that occurred here was really a miscommunication between the higher ups and himself. So when he was told to go out in front of the press at that point of time, just to give some context, the Cold War was more or less ending already, all right? And the people in East Berlin, they wanted to cross the Berlin Wall into the West, because between East and West Berlin, there was this huge ass wall that separated East and West Germany. So yeah, that's the short of it, of what happened here. So when this occurred, the Berlin Wall fell, right? And that essentially represented, the eventual, or rather that essentially kickstarted the events that would lead to the eventual reunification of Germany as a country, all right? So the point here is that if you don't know all these things, then you wouldn't have a clue as to like what is it that I'm talking about, right? So what you want to do is you want to go and read up more on all these events that, the author, whatever other choices that the author makes, in terms of referring to historical events or current affairs, so on and so forth, so that you can gain more understanding into what is it that the author is trying to say, all right? So that's how you deal with the general knowledge bit. I mean, obviously, at this juncture, I want to point out that you should do this whenever you're doing any comprehension practices. So in your, normal revision time, as you are, practicing comprehension bit, paraphrasing or your summary or even your AQ, okay? As you read the texts, you should apply this close reading method along the way already, all right? So that you can make it a habit, and in the context of the exam, you wouldn't get too flustered because you'll be used to using all these tools, essentially. But yeah, that's how you tackle the general knowledge bit. Now, moving on, breaking down complex sentence structures. So if let's say you encounter long sentence structures, and by long, I mean long, okay? How do we break up that long sentence into separate digestible ideas? We want to use certain markers so that we can mark out all the ideas that are raised within the sentence itself. So the markers that I teach my students to use would always be things like punctuation, conjunctions, and prepositions. All right. So, I mean, at this juncture, you should already know what all these things are. But just for a quick refresher, conjunctions are words that connect words together, literally. So words like and, but, however, although, so on and so forth. Prepositions are words that suggest the relationship between words. So words like to, all right, and that the relationship in that case would be sort of like directional relationship. Before, a time sort of relationship. On, positioning sort of relationship. So those are prepositions, right? Now, what do I mean by using markers to break down a long sentence structure? So let's say using a very, very long sentence from the previous excerpt here. The fall of the Berlin Wall is oft cited as one of the key defining moments in the Cold War and could arguably serve as a crucial example of iconoclasm. That is, the rejection of orthodox institutions and their prevailing beliefs through the breaking of imagery for political or religious reasons. Wow, that's a bloody mouthful, right? So how do we break this up into digestible ideas? Because the longer the sentence is, the more difficult it is to pass through all the information that is conveyed here. This is how you do it. The fall of the Berlin Wall is oft cited as, so we see a preposition here, we make a marking here. And then we have idea number one. And the first idea here basically is suggesting that this event, the fall of the Berlin Wall, is often referred to as something. Okay? The fall of the Berlin Wall, that event, is often referred to as something. All right? So as one of the... Now, technically, we can make a marking here, but I think for JC students, you all don't need such, detailed levels of guidance. All right. So one of the key defining moments. So one of the more, important or critical or crucial moments in the Cold War. You see a comma here. All right. Segment it out. Okay. So idea number two. Idea number three. In this case, all right, idea number two, I already explained what it is. In the Cold War, so in the events of the Cold War itself, all right, that's what idea number three means. And then we put ideas 1, 2, and 3 together. We get this very, very complex clause, I guess. But when you combine the ideas, then you will understand, this event of the fall of the Berlin Wall is often referred to as one of the key moments. So one of the more crucial moments, most important moments in the Cold War itself. So the Cold War obviously is an event that spanned half of the 20th century. All right. With many, events happening throughout the whole conflict itself. So that means that within the entire law, all right, of the Cold War, the fall of the Berlin Wall is one of the key moments. That's what this clause is suggesting. And could arguably serve as a crucial example. So we see another preposition here. All right, we do another marking. Could arguably serve. So there is an argument we made, right? We are not taking a very, very strict or absolute stance on this issue. We are just saying that it can be argued in this way of iconoclasm. So of iconoclasm, that means that we are arguing that this whole thing, ideas 1, 2, and 3, okay, could be idea 4, an important example of this thing, idea 5. Because we can do another marking here. Okay? So, of course, if we read on, right, then we would know what iconoclasm stands for, i.e., the rejection of orthodox institutions. So, preposition, conjunction, right, and their prevailing beliefs through, so this one is another conjunction here, the breaking preposition of imagery, preposition again, for political, conjunction, or religious reasons, right? So on and so forth. I'm not going to break this down in such minute detail because, yeah, y'all should know all these things, but let's say for the sake of argument, right? i.e. the rejection of orthodox institutions. I mean, obviously, I am explaining this on the basis that you all know what these words stand for. If you don't know, pause here, go and look up the dictionary, okay? So, that means, right, ideas 1 to 5, up to this point, maybe I should use a different color here. Up to this point, okay, we are saying that the fall of the Berlin Wall, it could serve as a crucial example of this thing. And what is this thing? This thing is the rejection, idea number 6. And then idea number 7, and so on and so forth. That's how you want to label, for each marking that you make in the text itself. Rejection of what? So iconoclasm refers to the rejection of traditional institutions and their belief systems, their values, their culture, whatever, right? So traditional sort of like systems and their beliefs by breaking imagery. Okay, this one, just to make it absolutely clear, it's a very literal thing. So iconoclasm essentially means like breaking certain images or certain iconography. So for instance, the destruction of, let's say, the destruction of Civil War Confederate general statues in USA, right? Let's say you break a statue, or rather you break a statue to send a political message, that is a form of iconoclasm, okay? So the rejection of this thing and their prevailing beliefs, and then by breaking this for political or religious reasons. And then you connect these ideas together, and then you will see that, the Berlin Wall is an important moment in the Cold War, but also, it could serve as a crucial example of iconoclasm, which is this, and this. Yeah, that's how you break down complex sentence structures to really deepen your understanding of long sentences, right? Because often when sentences are long, there's a reason why they're written in this way. I mean, it's not really to infuriate people, although yes, I can understand why people might think that way, but the reason why authors often keep their sentences long is because there are interconnected ideas that they have to convey within a single sentence. So that's why this particular method in the process of close reading is very, very important, right? Especially since for GP, your comprehension passages tend to have quite long sentence structures. So yeah, okay. Now, once you have done that, that's where you can start to reflect on certain writing choices. This is a little bit too much for me to cover in one single video. I might create ancillary videos, to support this one, but for now, what we mean by understanding, or rather reflecting on certain choices, right? The base of it is really just to question why. Why does the author make this choice? That's the key question. Okay, so it can be applied to many different contexts. So there are some examples here. Okay, and keep in mind that this is a non-exhaustive list. That means there are many other things, to which we can apply the question of why does the author or authors, okay, make this choice. Okay, so why does the author make use of certain literary devices? Or, let's say similes, right? Because they want to make certain comparisons while making a point. Or metaphors as well. Or why does the author make use of this particular event that can be added to my general knowledge? Perhaps it's meant to create a hook. So, for instance, this particular excerpt here, okay, as I said just now, it was taken from paragraph 1 of the actual comprehension insert, all right, that we created in-house. That means we wrote all the passages and set all the questions, okay. Yeah, so for this particular text, I made the choice, right? Because as I said earlier, I wrote this one. I made the choice to begin this particular passage with this example. What is it that I'm trying to do? I'm trying to hook readers' attention, right? So general knowledge can be used to do that. Or if let's say the same event is used in two separate locations in the actual text itself, it can be used to create some sort of thematic continuity, or just simply for stylistic flair. All right, why does the author use certain punctuation? Is it meant to convey tone or to question certain ideas, right? Like your quotation marks, okay, or to create emphasis for certain things. Or why does the author use this adverb here? Let's say instead of just saying we could argue that, let's say, reading is important, right? Let's say we have a sentence here like this, but if I add an adverb, reading is absolutely important, then that's where as aspiring discerning readers, right, you all should question, why does the author make use of this particular adverb of absolutely? What sort of point is the author trying to convey? What is the specificity of the meaning here, right? So then we know, absolutely important, that means the author is trying to suggest that without any question, reading is something everybody must do. Must do. So then from there you can paraphrase, reading is absolutely important, paraphrase to reading is necessary. Yeah. So things like that, by asking this basic question, we apply it to all these different contexts, the usage of certain current affairs, literary devices, punctuation, word choices, so on and so forth. But to arrive at this point whereby you can really, very expertly weave through all the different meanings of the texts and all that, everything else must be done first. All your previous steps have to be done first. Then that's how you can reflect on your writing choices. So, yeah, once you understand all these things, right, then we can start to break down the paragraph itself. So let's say we have this is paragraph 1 of the actual insert. You have seen the first half of it. So the second half, beginning from here, nevertheless, such a phenomenon is nothing new. When we thumb through the pages of history, iconoclasm is a perennial feature with a never-ending tug of war between religions, ideologies, political leanings, ellipses. In fact, we opened the 21st century with the Taliban's destruction of the Buddhas of Bamiyan in Afghanistan in 2001. Oh, what a way to cross the threshold into the next frontier of mankind's story. Yeah, so a lot to break down here, right? If let's say you want to apply your close reading methods. Okay, in this second half of the excerpt here, I don't think there are any, sentence structures that may be considered too long, for your JC level. Okay, so we don't have to do that here, all right? But let's say we apply the principles of, vocab. Or for instance, you don't know what perennial means. Perennial feature, that means it has always been there in time. Oh, so you don't know what this word is? Go and look it up in a dictionary. Then you'll find out, oh, always there, regardless of. Uh, sorry about this. Don't know why the drawing pad is acting up. So always there, regardless of era. All right. Yeah. And then, of course, general knowledge. What are the Buddhas of Bamiyan in Afghanistan? So I would encourage you to go and read up more on this, but short of it is that there were a whole bunch of, okay, I would say about three, really, really large Buddha statues. So statues of Gautama Siddhartha, right, the founder of the Buddhism religion in Afghanistan. And these statues are, I would say, about 1,000+ years old. 1,000+ years old. Okay. In 2001, the Taliban destroyed it. So thousands of years of human history just got wiped out like that. So now you understand that context, then you know that, oh, what the Taliban did essentially was to destroy that particular imagery, right? Because obviously in Abrahamic religions, they don't really believe in too much idol worship. That means worship of tangible forms of divine beings or what have you, right? And of course, in the case of the Taliban, when religion is taken to the extreme, then they would outright reject a lot of all these things. Now, just to be clear, there's a lot of underpinning context behind this particular event. In the first place, the Taliban was quite reluctant to destroy it, but for reasons that okay, I don't want to say, I just want to make it clear, it's not like I'm justifying their actions here, but they did explain their reasons, even if it may not really be all that acceptable, but whatever, alright? Yeah, so that's the general knowledge bit here, alright? And okay, if let's say we want to reflect on writing choices, oh, why does the author make use of this? Why does the author make use of this word? Why does the author use the word never ending or tug of war? Why describe it? Why use this metaphor here? And then of course these ones rather, why did the author make use of all these creative choices? Okay, so, or rather, why did I make all these creative choices? Because yeah, so that is how you can apply your close reading skill. Then from there you can suss out a little bit, oh, maybe this is for tone. Oh, why use this? Maybe because it will never stop, perhaps. Maybe, right? And then that's where you realize, oh, why describe it as a tug of war? So tug of war is a sort of like game or sport whereby I mean, if you have seen Squid Game, you should know, okay, where they fight to get the flag over a particular point. You have two teams, all right? So if we describe this thing as a never-ending tug of war between religions, ideologies, and political leanings, that means different religions will always fight with each other, right? When we say tug of war, we are referring to some form of conflict, okay? Or people of different political leanings, they will also always fight with each other. Same goes for ideologies, so on and so forth. And then that's where we can see, oh, it will never stop. So people of different religions, ideologies, and political leanings will always fight with each other, and that justifies why iconoclasm is a perennial feature. Things like that. And yeah, so that's how you deepen, or rather that's how you would apply the close reading skill to this particular paragraph here. And of course you have 3 passages in the actual paper itself. As you read through all the passages, apply this skill throughout. All right. So I talked so much about this. You might be wondering, why is this important? Because if you can suss out all these things, okay, understand the meanings of certain words, understand the general knowledge, the contextual knowledge behind it, understand why the author makes use of certain long sentence structures, or just purely from a mechanical point of view, the form of it, understand the meaning of the form that the writing has taken, and then from there reflect upon the text, derive the subtext, or just derive the very, very surface meaning of it. It gives you the ingredients to tackle the comprehension questions. What do I mean? Okay, because close reading helps you suss out the potential question types. For example, if I were to set a question just on the paragraph that you saw earlier, these are the potential questions that I can set. And I think I did set one of these questions for the actual comprehension paper that we created. I can't remember already, it's been a while. But yeah. So why does the author begin the passage with the example of the fall of Berlin Wall? 2 marks. And then you can say, oh, the author began this passage with this example to emphasize something, right? Destruction of the Berlin Wall is a rejection of the old Soviet sort of ideology. And that in turn is meant to supplement, and introduce, I guess, the idea of iconoclasm. Or why did the author place "and literally" in parentheses? Parentheses just refers to brackets. So this one. Okay, then you know brackets, what they're meant to do is to provide additional information, right? So the author is attempting to provide additional information that the wall between East and West Berlin was not just metaphorically destroyed, it was literally destroyed, i.e., the citizens of both West and East Germany actually destroyed the wall itself, or at least not the entire thing, but parts of it. Okay, or explain the author's usage of the word nevertheless, right? Suggest a reason why the author made use of the exclamation mark, why did the author use ellipsis, or the author is trying to suggest that these ideas are, or these conflicts, because in context, we are talking about a never-ending tug of war. These conflicts, or rather the potential conflicts that could occur, is a non-exhaustive list, right? It will never end because there are so many things that can potentially, be flashpoints for conflict that may go on and on and on and on and on forever. So, yeah, these are potential questions that teachers would set, or even SEAB itself. And if you understand all the text and the rationales, right, the creative choices that go into the writing itself, then okay, yeah, you understand the rationale, you just need to phrase it in a way that answers the question directly. And that's how you secure all your marks. That's why close reading is so important. I always emphasize it in our lessons. At least for those who are doing the normal, tuition lessons with us, right? The weekly tuition lessons. I always tell them this when we, deal with comprehension. And yeah, but at the end of the day, it requires a lot of practice on your part. So you need to, the more you practice, the more you get used to this, the quicker you are able to identify and understand the meaning of the text itself. All right? So that's why close reading, very important. Very time consuming, yes, but very, very important. Something that must be done in your regular practice so that in the exam itself, you can annotate quickly and you can better suss out the meanings and, as you can see here, the answers to potential questions. Because if you understand like what are the sort of things on which your paper setters would set a question, then you're golden, right? Then you'll be able to do very well. So yeah. So summary, right? How do we improve reading comprehension? 4 steps. Build vocab. That means as you read and you see words that you do not know, go and find out more. Like in terms of its meaning, its root meanings, and all the other potential meanings, so on and so forth, and then use the most suitable meaning in context. Gain general knowledge. So the more general knowledge you gain, the more you will be able to deal with any sort of surprises that might come up, not just for comprehension, but for essays as well. Flesh out complex sentence structures. So as I demonstrated earlier, break it down using all those markers. Question certain writing choices or certain creative choices. That's how you get the subtext or even just an understanding of the form of the writing itself. And once you can achieve all these things, then you can achieve deeper comprehension. And yeah, so that'll be it for this video. If you found this useful, please share it with your friends. Get them to join the Telegram channel because we are trying to build a community there. All right. Or alternatively, if you require further help with your comprehension, please feel free to engage us for a free trial lesson. All right. You can call or WhatsApp us at this number, or to get more information, visit our website here. Or if you have a question, all right, please feel free to submit a question using this link. We will answer these questions on our weekly podcast. And yeah, so that'll be it for this particular video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.